Hello, I'm Jay Kelly. Welcome to my channel. I have a Canik Elite subcompact that I really enjoy shooting in IDPA competition. As you can see, it's optic equipped, so I would be shooting in a carry optics division. Unfortunately, as a subcompact, it really is not competitive in that division. I wanted to do a few things to try and improve it, and I wanted to share with you first initial steps in my journey. But safety first. There is no magazine in the gun. There is no round in the chamber or in the gun in any way. I'm going to now pull the trigger and point into the gun in a safe direction. Pull the tabs down to release the slide it forward, take it off, and put it off to the side. Okay, things that I wanted to do to improve the competitive nature was to replace the trigger. This is the replacement trigger. I'll come back to that in a minute. I also wanted to replace the spring, the trigger return spring. I also wanted to replace in the slide the safety plunger spring to make that a little bit easier to manipulate. And as I said before, the trigger. And then finally, replacing the backstrap with a brass backstrap to have increased weight coming down in my hand as opposed to all the weight on the top of the gun, and to make it a little bit more easy to control. But before I do anything, I had to address the fact that it keeps biting me. What do I mean by that? Well, when you take your hand and you put it around the grip, what they have done is they've contoured the area where the trigger guard meets the grip. I think they call that relieving it, but I'm not positive. This area right in here. They curve it to make it fit your finger, and so that you can have your hand higher on the grip. Now, especially with a gun that has a small grip, that's a really positive thing. I'm all in favor of that. But unfortunately, the trigger guard on the Canik is very hard plastic, and it has very sharp, rigid edges. And so what was happening is that when I took the normal grip on the gun, the edge of the trigger guard was actually biting in to my finger, right in this area here. And also, could be my imagination, but I could feel it, when the gun recoiled, the recoil would be pushing back and hitting in that area. So it was very uncomfortable. Little tiny pinch, but they add up over the course of a stage or a match. So what I did to work on that was get out my Dremel. Dremel with a sanding wheel, and then with the Dremel on the very first speed, the lowest speed possible, lightly contour this area in here. Take off all the sharp edge, round it off, smooth it, so that when my finger fits in there, it doesn't bite into it. It just fits very comfortably against my little chubby finger. Also, don't forget to do the other side for those situations when you have weekend only engagement of targets. Okay, so that takes care of that. And it's an extremely comfortable grip now. So, simple fix for something that was annoying. Now, back to the trigger. The trigger itself that comes stock on the gun was a nice trigger. It broke reliably at 5 pounds pressure, and it broke crisply, cleanly. It felt like a 1911 type trigger. The only problem that I had with it was the length of pull, and it would take from this position here to where it would release the striker. It would take a full half inch. It would have, forgetting the safety blade, that you don't really feel that, but it would take 3/16 of an inch of pre-travel. Then as you start, you can feel tension building, 3/16 of an inch more till you hit the wall, and then another 2/16 with 5 pounds of pressure for it to snap and break and release the striker and for the gun to fire. So the total was a half inch. Now that may not seem like a lot, and it was pretty smooth. But the problem that I have is that in IDPA competition, you're frequently going from one target to the next, and when you do, your finger must be clearly and visibly outside of the trigger guard so that when you get to the next target, you're faced with a situation of an initial trigger pull again, and not just simply a makeup shot or re-engagement after a short reset. So I went online, thank you YouTube, and for all those who posted suggestions, and decided that I would try the Freedomsmith trigger. This is their Pro, Pinnacle Pro, I believe. And I went to their website, and a couple of things concerned me when I did. First of all, it says that the trigger that you get is specific to the model of the gun and that it will not fit other models unless specified. Good and bad here, but confusing. My gun is labeled a TP9 Elite Subcompact. Their website says that the trigger fits all Canik Elites, including subcompact, but will not fit a TP9. What the heck bananas, as my granddaughter would say. I got both on my slide. So the only thing I can conclude is that the TP9, and they do show it in quotes, the TP9 was the original model, and the newer ones, the TP9 Elite, are different. So since it said that it fits all Elite models, including subcompact, and I can't find Canik selling anything subcompact other than the TP9 Elite subcompact, I decided to go ahead and order it. The other thing that concerned me a little bit was their insistence on the website, and then repeated again on the packaging when it arrived, that this be installed by qualified gunsmith. They also say user of the product assumes all liability of the product. That's kind of standard. But I mean, they're really hyping the fact that they want it installed by a qualified gunsmith. Yet when I look on YouTube, it looks like drop-in installation. So I went on Facebook, thank you Facebook and those who follow and were courteous enough to respond, and asked the question, is this drop-in or is this really gunsmith required? And the answer is, well, yeah, kind of, sort of. The problem is the stuff. It's not the trigger. It's getting to the trigger, and it's getting the old one out and putting the new one in. And to get to the trigger, what you've got to do is you've got to remove this roll pin, which holds the locking block in place. You have to remove this roll pin, which takes this tab off, and there's a shaft that goes through the locking block so that you can take that out, and then you can get the locking block out. You have to remove this roll pin, which allows you to remove the right-hand side of the slide lock lever, and that has a shaft that goes all the way across to the left-hand side, and that shaft goes through the locking block and it goes through the trigger. So unless you have that shaft out, you cannot remove the trigger. Physically can't get it out. And then you have to remove this roll pin, which locks in the back part of the trigger mechanism and allows that to come out. Now, there are a couple of things on YouTube where they remove the slide lock lever, this roll pin, and they remove the roll pin for the back part of the trigger mechanism. And with that lever removed, you can then lift up the back section and rotate this a little bit. Even though it's not coming out, you can do that. And then if you drive out the pin on your old trigger, and notice here, there are two holes on the old trigger. The top one holds the spring in for the safety blade. The bottom one is the one that goes through, the pin goes through the trigger and then through the trigger bar that would be coming in from this direction. And so what you have to do is drive that pin out, or at least drive it halfway so it's past the trigger bar. And then you can lift the back section, you can rotate this, play with it, fuss with it, and slide the trigger out. Put the new trigger back into position, and then Freedomsmith sends you the new trigger with the trigger pin inserted halfway already. Do not take that out because it's already holding in the spring for its blade, safety blade. And then you can drive that in from this side once you have it lined up. I didn't try to do that. I think next time I probably would. The reason I didn't want to do that is I wanted to get all the mechanism out so that I could examine how this spring is attached, because I want to replace that spring when it comes in from Galloway. And so I wanted also to make sure if there was any kind of clearance issues that I had everything apart, everything out, and I would be able to see the clearance problem if there were any clearance issues. There were not. I had a devil of a time getting the roll pins out, and I won't bore you with all of that. I did not. I basically took a video of that, and I've deleted it. It's not worth it. But I will tell you this: if you're comfortable with roll pins and you're comfortable working with the pieces parts, it is a drop-in fit. It fits in beautifully. If you're not comfortable with that, then I would say buy the part or go to your local gun store, let them buy it, and pay them the $20 or $30 to have them install it. They're getting their money's worth in knowledge, in having the right tools, in taking care of it for you, and you know it's done correctly. And so, again, if you know what you're doing and you've got the right tools, it's not that big a deal. The problem are the roll pins. It's not the trigger. The trigger will fit fine. While I have the gun apart, there's one other thing I want to show you, just because it's my pet peeve, and that's this darn slide lock lever spring right here. And let me position it. There you go. You can see it right there. Okay. That has to come down and sit on top of that lug. And it's easy to get bent. I put a separate video out on this. If you're working with the gun and you're taking things apart, don't forget to put that back up on top of there. Ask me how I know that. At any rate, the end result, once it's installed, is pretty amazing. Again, I will show you there is nothing in the gun, no magazine, nothing in the chamber. But I'm still pointing in the safe direction at all times. When I pull the trigger now with the new trigger install from Freedomsmith, instead of a 1/2 inch trigger travel, I've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 4/16. 4/16. Okay, I'm getting 2/16 of an inch travel of take up to the wall, and then 2/16 of an inch travel as it breaks. And that's it. So it's gone from a 1/2 inch to 4/16 of an inch. And that's really kind of amazing. The reset is back to that 2/16. And the trigger pressure required is 4.5 pounds. I've measured it over and over and over again. It comes out every time, 4.5 pounds. So I suspect it'll get a little bit less than that when I put the Galloway spring in. But for now, I am really, really, really delighted with this. Again, the problems were my problems, not Freedomsmith's problems. The Freedomsmith part works fine and fits fine. It was my hassling trying to get the darn roll pins in and out, back and forth. And so that's it on the Canik TP9 Elite Subcompact with the new Freedomsmith trigger installed. And I will probably put another video up later after I get the Galloway Precision spring installed and the brass backstrap that I've ordered installed, to see how that improves the shootability. But for now, that'll do it. Thank you for paying attention, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Have fun out there, and as always, shoot safe.